Hey everyone, today I'm going to take a look at Garuda Linux, the Sway edition. Sway is a Wayland tiling compositor, which also acts as a drop-in for the i3 window manager. So here I am on my main desktop here. As you can see, we got the Welcome to Garuda Linux welcome app here. And here we got a fresh install. Of course, I got OBS installed on here as well, but this is what you see when you log in for the first time. And so if I hit OK here, it looks like it's probably going to run the updates, and also has an updater app up here in the Waybar. So this is your Waybar that it's using for the panel up here. And you can see that there's 92 updates available. Anytime you click on that, you can bring up the updater and run it. And this is a Garuda updater, by the way, which is really cool. And here you can see a list of all the different things that need updating and what version they're going to. So that is really nice too. You can see it right at a glance on the fly, which I think is really great. And then what popped out there when I moused over this was a PackSeek utility along with an upgrade option as well. So the PackSeek is really cool, and we're going to get to that in a little bit. But first, I'm just going to authenticate here and just kind of let this run in the background while I'm yapping. And so this is a first-time update. Looks like it's refreshing the mirror lists and all that. And it says to please be patient, so that must be a clue that it's going to take a while. But that's okay. We'll let that kind of do its thing. And then that should kind of do its business. And while it's doing that, I say we explore the Waybar real quick. So if we take a look at the Waybar up here, it's styled really nice right off the bat, right out of the box. So I really like that. It looks great already on the Sway desktop. All the way over here to your left, we got the little Garuda icon here. And when you click on it, it opens up NWG Drawer, which is a really nice launcher here. It's really quite beautiful, I think. So here you got all these different apps. And they're all sorted by categories. Right now we're looking at all the apps, but we can also filter them by accessories, graphics, internet and network, which we got Firedragon for our default web browser. So I like that. Firedragon is kind of, I think they call themselves the Vivaldi of Firefox. It's a Firefox-based browser. But it's kind of like Vivaldi, apparently. I've never really used it, so I'm kind of curious to take a look at that as well. But looks like a pretty cool browser. Next category is programming, so it looks like Micro is installed by default, and Meld, which I think is a file compare utility there. And then under sound and video, we got volume control, MPV player, and celluloid installed by default. And then our system tools with a lot of the essentials in here, like Azote, which I think Azote is like a Wayland equivalent to nitrogen, if I remember right. That is a great way to manage your desktop backgrounds. I believe it works pretty much the same as nitrogen, except it's made for Wayland compositors rather than the Xorg type. And we got our ButterFS assistant, Bluetooth, displays, and so forth. Speaking of ButterFS assistant, when I was installing Garuda, the only thing I didn't really like that much was when you did the manual partitioning, they did not give you an option for the extend for partition. So I had to install ButterFS, so I didn't really have that choice there. I think I understand the logic though, because of the fact that we have Snapper on here, and there's probably some other items that probably require a ButterFS for the default configuration to actually work the way it should. So that's really cool with me. If I was really that worked up about it, I would have just launched gparted and manually partitioned it in a ext4 anyway. But I probably wouldn't really want to do that, because I'm sure they have a good reason for making you use ButterFS, because it probably would have screwed things up. So I can't really call that a negative, but I just had to throw that in there anyway. And then we got our GTK settings, HTOP, and there's gparted, just talking about that. Then we also got Garuda's Rani, which is a software center of sorts, I believe. And I think that's kind of what we might have seen in the startup as well. But if I hit that, I think that's going to launch this. Looks like our system updated too, so I'll just press enter and let that exit. So that's good. And now it's going to the next stage, checking for NVIDIA drivers, which I don't have a NVIDIA card on here. This is kind of what you get after you run the initial update. And here we got OS preferences, asking if I need printer support and all that. So I'm going to say yes. Do you want to install additional Garuda wallpapers? Sure, you can never have enough wallpapers. And then do you need pen testing software? No, I'm good with that. So I'm going to just stick with that. And then on the input here, we can add some more fonts here. And I'm going to go with Asian font support. If you use Pinyin and you want some Chinese input, then simplified Chinese add-ons here would actually be a good choice too. Or any of these other ones if you need them. And then under our software center, we can add in some more software centers if we wish to go beyond the Garuda Rani, which is like your GNOME firmware updater. We got an app image launcher, Octopi, Discover, and all that. I don't really use GUI software launchers that much. I'm good with Rani. I think I'm just going to stay with that. And then here we can add some different kernel options. You're more comfortable with a Linux LTS kernel, maybe an older one. That could be a good option. A little bit less updates maybe. If you need more stability and you might have older hardware, always a great option. Newer hardware, I'd probably stick with Zen, especially if you're gaming and stuff like that. And then under Office, we can add in some Office software if you like. LibreOffice Fresh is probably what I would go with. I like that. And then here we can add in our extra browsers. So if you want to add in Firefox and all that, then you could use any of these, or Brave, which is another good one. Vivaldi is nice. I like Vivaldi as well. But Firedragon is the default, and I believe it's already in there. And Firedragon is a fork of Florp. So that's kind of cool. Or maybe it's Florp. I don't know for sure, but I think I'll just go with Florp. But it looks like it's got custom settings and branding too, so that's worth taking a look at. Then you can add in email clients, communication, internet, audio. And so if I wanted to add some more audio in here, I would probably go in and add something like Audacity. And under video, I would probably add in OBS Studio, but I already did. Otherwise, you wouldn't hear me. But VLC Player is definitely a good choice. I like Shotcut too. That's still one of my favorite video editors. So I'd probably go with that as well. And then under graphics, the old standards, if they're not already installed. Some of these may already be installed, and in which case it would just kind of skip over them. But with GIMP and Inkscape is typically what I go with on my own setup. Then they got some cool choices here. Sweet Home 3D is a pretty cool interior design software. I've played with that before. Wings 3D, I forgot what that is. Subdivision Modeler. Okay, so yeah, it's probably like Blender or, some other type of modeler where you can create characters and so forth. But yeah, just a lot of really nice suggested choices there in the graphics department. And under multimedia, we got Hypnotics. That's one I like. Shortwave is a great radio app there as well. Right on down. Cody's great if you like to watch movies and things. And then we got our development software. VS Codium is something I use quite often, so I'm going to tick that as well. I also like Visual Studio Code. I'm okay with it. Qt Creator is cool. That's something I use a lot, but anymore I prefer Qt Designer actually in combination with VS Codium. For me, VS Codium is just such a nicer environment to develop in, so yes. And then VirtualBox and Virt Manager. So these are a couple things I would probably install as well. So that is that, and I'm just gonna authenticate here and just let it install some packages, whatever isn't already on there. And it looks like it would be mainly FFmpeg and some of this other stuff, Inkscape and what have you. So I'm going to just let it install. Nice. So that's kind of the essential setups there. And so that's applying. When that's done, I'm not sure what it's going to do. It's probably going to go to a different menu. So moving on back up here into the Waybar, here we have our two open workspaces, of course the one we're on, and then workspace 5, which is where my OBS Studio is. So that's what we got there. And then in the middle, we have our networking info there. And then we saw this before, we got PackSeek, and PackSeek is really cool. If you go in here, you can go in and look for stuff. So if you wanted to install, say, Inkscape, but you wasn't sure if it was installed or not, you can just type it in here. and it'll find it for you. Plus all the little variants here that you can use that may go along with Inkscape. For some software, it might be plugins or whatever. So here we got Inkscape Silhouette, and Python figures, and so forth. Here you got all this, and Inkscape is installing right now, so it's not showing that it's installed, but that checkbox will be ticked once it's actually installed. And so that's a great way to find out if your software is installed as well. And then it shows all the dependencies over here, even the ones that are actually more optional that you might decide you want later. You can see them over here. So this is really nice. I like Packseed a lot. And a lot of times I find myself using it just to install software, because I can just come up here and just type something in and then it'll find it for me. Plus the variations, maybe there's a Git version and so forth. Packseed is really nice. So yeah, A+ on Packseed, in my opinion. And then here we got our cheat sheet. So if you click on this little keyboard icon here, it'll show you all the default key bindings that we have available right now. So to change the window focus, here we got our arrow keys with a super key. And the mod key, of course, is the super key. And if you just press it by itself, it'll open the launcher. I prefer just using my super D, which on here it's opening a little Rofi menu, it looks like, or a D menu, Rofi something or other. So that's kind of nice. And then to close a window, we got super backspace, but I think super Q also works as well. And for me, that's more convenient. And that's also mapped in there. So super Q, close that just like that. And then our next thing is we got our CPU usage here, and then our mouse stuff. If I click on that, and then our overall usage here, I think that's like a process. If I click on it, and you can see the little mouse icon there, so that's kind of denoting that that's clickable. And so here you can kind of see some information at a glance: CPU, memory, network. So yeah, that's kind of our resource usage here, and that's pretty nice too. And then of course we got our sound settings. If you click on it, then it's going to open up PAVU control, and you can see all the different settings here if you need to adjust anything. And in my case, I would be using the speakers rather than the blue microphone, so that's selected. And then our input devices and configuration. So easy access to PAVU control. And then of course you can roll your mouse wheel and change the volume as well. And then here we got our settings. You click on that and then it opens up our extra things here. Here we can see our sys tray. So there's our OBS Studio running in the background and a networking utility there, Bluetooth. And then our idle inhibitor, which I like to inhibit idle because I'm not an idle fan. So yes, I'm good with that. And finally, we have our clock over here. So this is our clock, and when you hover over it, you get a calendar that drops down. You can also click on it, and it brings up a calendar app here where you can add in appointments and so forth. And this is kind of a cool little app. This actually will synchronize with I think it's a proprietary calendar app called iCal. And so you can synchronize with that as well, or just use it the way it is. So where do I go next? I think Super E will launch Thunar, if I remember right. Yes, it did. And so let's take a look at our config now that we went through all that other cool stuff. So I'm going to jump in our config file and then pop over into Sway. And so here's our Sway config, and I believe the default config will point to the config.d directory, which it does. So I'm just gonna close that again and go into config.d, and it looks like default would probably be the key bindings. So if I click that, here we got some variables that are declared right off the bat, like mod 4. Typically I like to have an alt variable in there too, because sometimes I like using the alt key for some of my key bindings. In addition to zooming in here, I'm going to go to the next line here and create another variable. I think I'll just call the variable $ALT for alt. That makes it easy. And then the alt key is actually assigned to mod 1 in i3 and Sway. So now going forward, if I make a reference to this alt variable, then it'll allow me to bind an alt key in my bindings. And then here we got our basics. So we got our Control Alt Delete will open up the power menu. And then here it's showing mod backspace and mod Q for kill. So that's why they both work. I'm glad that's in there because I like having both options. I'm good with backspace too. Start your launcher, mod D. So that was my Super D. Nice minimal launcher. It's unintrusive and I like it. Then we got Alt Tab. So, Alt must already be defined somewhere. We got an uppercase Alt. So yeah, okay. Yeah, that's defined in Sway, I think. So that's kind of cool. Yeah, so I didn't really need to do that. Nice. So yeah, Alt Tab did just kind of switch over like that using Swayer. Then we got GT Lock for our lock screen. So if I do a mod F1 or Super F1, that will lock our screen. Activities, Super Tab to switch windows. That's just what we did. Oh, okay. So Super Tab will give us a little window switcher utility. That's pretty nice. And so it'll even switch across workspaces and take me over to workspace 5 if I want. Nice. That's very cool. So that gives you a nice quick overview of where all your different apps are if you got a lot of things open on different workspaces. So I like that. And then our window settings, and we have workspaces here. And these are all pretty standard, Super 1, 2, 3, and so forth for your different workspaces. It looks like there's 10 workspaces to switch from. And then, of course, to move your window into another workspace would be Super Shift 1 through 10. Nice. Then we got our layout stuff here. Mod space will toggle the floating. So if I hit Super Space, now this is a floating window. And it's showing a tiling. It's showing the window title bar up here. So that makes it easy to drag. I don't even have to use a modifier key to do that. So nice there. And so now I put it back, unfocused, it's back to tiling, but now it's on the bottom. I think to move that over, all I gotta do is Super Shift L, and that puts it back over. Very good. Also have a scratch pad in here set up by default. Pretty nice. Resizing with the arrow key. You can also just come over here with your mouse and watch the arrow cursor change, and then you can just drag it like that. So nice feature. You don't need any modifier keys again, which is one of the reasons I like i3 is you can do a lot of things without the modifier keys. I always like Qtile as well. And the only thing I didn't like about Qtile is you had to use a modifier key to resize things. And in i3, you don't have to do that. And for me, that's just kind of nice. It's, not a big deal, but it's kind of nice. Nice feature. Here we have our app shortcuts. So here we can see that Super E will launch Thunar and so forth. Firedragon, Super B, and calculator, and yeah, a lot of different things. And then our screenshot, we can hit print screen and it'll allow us to select a range. And then you can do control print, and then that'll let you screenshot a window and a pipe. Arr, being a pirate, I have never smoked a pipe. So yeah, let's just see how these bindings work. So here we got mod B for Firedragon. So I'm just going to press Super B. And so far, I'm not seeing Firedragon. Oh, there it is. Okay, nice. So Firedragon opened up in the same workspace as I clicked on, which I expected it to. So I'm going to close Firedragon again and let it close the tabs. And I want Firedragon to open up in Workspace 2, and I want it to take me over to Workspace 2 when I open it up. So what I'm gonna do is, here in the config file, I'm gonna make it a little bit bigger. I'm gonna find the spot here, Mod plus B, and then right after Mod plus B, I'm gonna hit the space key and type in Workspace 2, and then semicolon. And so after that, it should work in Workspace 2. So now what I'm going to do is press Control S to save, and now Super Shift C to reload our configuration. And now that we did that, if I hit Super B, it should launch in Workspace 2. And it did. It switched me over to Workspace 2, and now we got Firedragon. Nice. So how cool is that? Now, suppose you were over here and you said, Yeah, that's cool, but I want it to launch in Workspace too, but I don't want to follow it over. So what do I do then? Well, all you got to do is you would take this out for one thing, and then open another config file, which is application defaults. And if we double click on that, over here we got our window rules defined. And I'm gonna make that big again. And then in here, I'm just gonna go in and I'm gonna do an assign window. So if I do assign and then brackets, and inside the bracket, I'm gonna type in, just try app ID. I'm gonna guess here, but I'm gonna do app underscore ID equals Firedragon in quotes. And I could be wrong about that, but I'm just kind of doing a guess. And then I'm going to type here the number 1. 1 for workspace 1. Oh, wait, no, 2. What am I thinking? So assign app ID equals Firedragon, and then 2 for workspace 2. And then that should open it up in workspace 2, but not take you over there. So that's how you do that. The only thing I'm not sure about is if the app ID is correct. So I'm just going to give it a try. Control S, save it, and then Super Shift C. And it didn't like something. So let me toggle the details here. Unknown invalid command assign. Fascinating. So let's try a space there. There we go. We just needed a space. For some reason, I forgot to put a space there between assign and the other stuff. So now that we did that, if I hit Super B, let's see if it opens up in Workspace 2. First, I'm going to come over here and close it, and then go back to 1. And let's give it a try. Super B. And it looks like it did it. So it opened, we got Workspace 2 appearing here now. If I click on it, there it is. So I got the app ID right the first time. How cool is that? Now, if I open up a terminal, let's say I didn't know the app ID or the title or any of that other stuff, the class. There's a utility called WLProp, I think it is. It's the Wayland version of XProp where you can get the properties of an open app. I don't know if this is actually installed on here. I could use PackSeek. Go up here and just type it in. And I think it's WLProp. And there it is. So yeah, it's not installed. So if I just hit that and press enter, then it'll install that for me. And that's a really handy utility if you're doing a lot of work with window rules and things like that, and you need to get the class name or the property or even the title if you don't have a title bar showing. So those are all cool things. And then just authenticate here. And there you go. We got that installed. So now I can close this window and I can type in WLProp like that, and I'll zoom it in a bit. And when I type that, then we get our cursor changed. And if I come up here and just go to the top of this application and just click it, then it'll give us all the properties we need to know. So here's our app ID, and I did get it right. So it is showing Firedragon for our app ID. And then if you need any other type of information to go along with it, it's all available right here. So a very handy app. I really like using this. And another handy piece of info to know is dragging a floating window. So for example, if I take this foot terminal emulator and just press super space to make it floating, when you try to move it, it doesn't move when you click drag. So you have to use the modifier key, which is the super key. If you hold down the super key and then click, you can drag it like that. But there's also another thing you can do. Personally, I find it kind of a pain to use a modifier key just to drag around a floating window. But if you have an app that you want floating and you typically want to drag it around a lot, but without using the modifier key, there's a way around that. So let me turn that back to tiling and then Super Shift L to move it back over to the left. And we can go back into our workspace 1 here into our window rules. And then for foot, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a 4 window here. So I'm just going to space down once and make that a little bigger. And so I'm going to just type in 4_window. And then let's go with app ID again, app_ID equals, and it should just be foot. So I'm going to, in quotes, type in foot and then close the bracket. And then I'm going to type in floating enable, so it floats all the time. And then I'm going to give it a title bar. When you look up here, you got a title bar here on this application. And so if I make it float, then I can just drag it without a modifier key because there's a title bar up here. And so to add a title bar on a window that's not showing a title bar, then I'll show you how to do that. So I'm going to return that back to tiling mode and then Super Shift L to put it back on to the left. And so after floating enable, I'm going to type in border space and then normal. And so with border normal, that will put a title bar on it. So now if I save it, Control S and then Super Shift C to reload the config. Now if I open up foot, so let's go to another workspace. How about workspace 3, Super 3, and then I'm going to open up foot, Super Enter, and now you can see that the foot client is floating, and then the border on it, which is the title bar, is normal, and now I can just drag it around to my heart's content without having to use a modifier key. And so border normal is the key to doing that, just so you know. And of course, you don't have to have it floating all the time. You could leave that part out, the floating enable, and just have it border normal, I believe. I think. I never tried it. So let's try it. I've just saved it. Control C and then Super Shift C to reload. And let's just try it. So I'm going to close this and then reopen up foot. And there it is. And you can see the title bar up here. So now you got foot with the title bar, but it's not floating. And so super space, and now it's floating. I can drag it around. So either way, you can do that, but you got to show the title bar if you want to be able to drag a floating window without having to use a modifier key. And so just in case there's one other person in the world other than me that likes to do that without the modifier, then there you go. So let's move on. From here, let's take a look at the Waybar. So I'm going to close Micro here, this editor, and then let's go over to Workspace 3 just so we got some background. And in the Waybar, I can go to Workspace 1 and in our now I'm just going to back out of these directories here into our config, and then I'm going to go with Waybar into our Waybar folder. And here we have our config file, and then you got a scripts directory here that corresponds to the key hint, which I think is this guy up here, opens up that little app. But our config and our style is mainly what I want to work with here. I'm going to open both. I'm going to double click on config, and that opened it up here in mousepad. And so now we got our config file that corresponds to Waybar, and then our styles.css. So we can change the colors in here as well. So I'm going to right click and do open with mousepad. And so here we got our styles, so we can choose different themes, or we can go with something like our own colors, which is also nice. And so you can do all kinds of styling in here. I'm not going to get too complicated, but one thing I would like to do is in my config file, I'd like to have the clock in the middle actually. And since in my settings here, I already got a networking thing, if I click on that, I can kind of see all this and get all the info that I really need right here. So I really don't need this over here in the middle. And so I'm going to just actually remove that. So if we come over here, we got our modules left, and this is the stuff that corresponds over to the left-hand side. And then our custom launcher, of course, we got our Garuda icon, which corresponds to that guy. Nice, and our workspaces. But if we go down a little bit more, here we have module center, and our networking app is up here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change network to clock instead. And then press Control S to save that. And again, I'm going to make that bigger so it's easier to see. We come over to modules right. And so here we got all this other stuff. And if I wanted to, I could add network over here and it would load this module on the left-hand side. But I'm just going to leave that out. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take clock out of here because now I have it in the middle. And then I'm going to Control S to save it and then Super Shift C to reload this. And now you can see the clock is in the middle. Cool. So that's where I like it personally. Then I'm going to scroll down here and I'm going to find clock. These are all our different modules that are listed here with our configurations, our module configurations. We got CPU temperature and they all correspond up here. And Wire Plumber, which is our audio app up here. And so if I scroll down a little bit more, somewhere in here is clock. Here it is, clock. So we got clock settings, and then what I'm going to do is over here next to our minutes, right here, I'm also going to add the seconds, because I use the seconds during the day, but this is purely optional. And so I just added a colon and then %S to display the seconds. So now if I save that, Super Shift C, we got our seconds displayed. But look at that. The seconds aren't moving. What? So what we need to do is, by default, the interval is probably 60 seconds. So we want to have it at 1 second. So I'm going to go in here and in quotes under format, I'm going to type interval. And then quote again, and then colon, space, 1 should do it. So after that, I'm going to save it, Super Control S, and then Super Shift C, reload. And I forgot a comma. That's why I didn't do anything. So I'm going to put a comma after the 1, and now we should be good. So save again, Super Shift C. And there we go. And our seconds are updating every second. Nice. So that is cool. Now the next thing is, I'd like to make the fonts bigger on that clock. So I'm going to go back over into my style here. And if you look, you can see the clock is in the list up here, along with a gazillion other modules, pretty much all the other ones. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this. I'm going to take this clock and I'm going to just cut it, Control X, and take it out of there. And I'm going to give it its own thing here. So I'm going to paste it right here, and then I'm going to replace that comma with a bracket, and then go down a couple lines and close the bracket with a closing bracket. Again, I got to make it bigger. Okay, so now I can put in some custom code just for the clock. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the code up here that's we've been using for all the other stuff, and I'm just going to copy that and paste it in here just like that. Control C, Control V. And so now what I want to do, I want to change the text color and the size of the text. So I'm going to just click over here and underneath background, I'm going to type in font -size, colon, and then just change the size, make it a little bigger. I'm not sure how big. I'm going to try, let's try 12. Whoops. Just for starters, just to see what it looks like. And then semicolon to end it. Save it. Super Shift C. And it looks the same. So let's try it bigger. Let's try 14. Save, Super Shift C. And that's a little bigger. That's looking better. How about 16? Probably 14's fine, but wow, 16's even better. I kind of like that. I also would like to have that bold, so I'm going to go down to the next line, and I'm going to type in font -weight, colon, and then type in bold. and then end it with a semicolon, save it again, Control S, Super Shift C, and now we got a bold font. Hooray! Now I want to change the color. So let's go down here and I'm going to go and type in color. And then let's make that kind of a yellowish font. Maybe I'm going to go into my browser here and I'm going to get an extension. This is a nice way to get colors, real easy. And then in my search, I'm going to type in color picker, or wait a minute, Colorzilla, I think it's called. And there's Colorzilla, the first result. So I'm going to click on that and add that to our Firedragon here, aka Firefox. So I'm going to continue and then hit add. And now it's saying it was added. Hooray! Okay, so now that we got that in there, I can come up here under my extensions icon, select Colorzilla, and then I'm going to just open up the color picker and then just pick a color. And I think I'd kind of like that to be a variation of yellow, probably, but not so yellow. Maybe maybe a little towards the orange end of the spectrum, but not quite. And let's try that and see what it looks like. So I'm going to hit OK. Whoops. No, I'm not. First, I want to get these RGB settings. So I'm going to grab that and I'm going to just Control C to copy it. And then back over here, wherever I was, back on Workspace 1, and then under Clock here for color, I'm going to do RGB this time. And then just paste that in. So here we got our color RGB and then these numbers, and not a colon, that should be a semicolon. Let's save it. Super Shift C. And something's not right. Oh, I need a colon after color. Okay, save, Super Shift C. And now we got yellow fonts on our clock. Yay! And maybe a different background would be cool too. How about, let's go back to our color picker. And I'm kind of thinking for the background on these guys, color picker, green, kind of an emerald color. Let's try maybe like that. Then we'll get our RGB numbers. Paste them in. I'm not sure that's quite the green I want, but let's try it. Control S, Super Shift C. Ah, they worked over here. Okay, cool. And, yeah, I guess that's all right. Might need a little bit of tweaking. Maybe move it up just a hair more towards the blue spectrum. And then maybe a little bit lighter, slightly. Maybe kind of like that. Copy the numbers. Control C to copy. And I think I got the parenthesis in there too. I'll get that out. All right, let's give it a try. Save, Super Shift C. Yeah, that's better. Yeah, that's more like the color I like. So let's go with that. And then I want to do the same with the clock here. So I'll take our background RGBA and I'll just copy that whole thing, come down under our clock and do that. Save it, Super Shift C. And now we got the same as for our clock. And actually for the clock, I think I'm going to give that a blue background. So I'm going to come back over here and let's make the clock blue. Let's let that differentiate. I think that would work better with the yellow there. So I'm going to come over and give it kind of a dark blue. Maybe something more like that. Then back into our editor. And so for clock, let's change these numbers. And I'll paste that in, save it, Super Shift C, see how blue looks. Yeah, there we go. Okay, I can handle that. So here we got blue and then we got our green. Also, we can change our hover color if you like. So instead of that being gray when you hover over it, I think I'd kind of like it a lighter variation of what we have here. And then come back over here. And then in our color picker, open that up again. Back into the emerald green, a little bit slanted towards the blue. And then I'm going to make it like a lighter color for the highlighting. Maybe something like this. And so I'm going to do my copy there. Back into my config. And so now what I want to do is I want to do a clock hover. So I'm just going to go under here and I'm going to type in hashtag clock dot hover and then close it in the braces there. Actually, that should be a colon. There we go. And so let's go down. Here's our hover stuff. So again, I'm going to take out the clock hover since we're making our own custom. And then I'm going to copy this stuff, except first I'm going to paste the numbers that I got in so I don't forget. And then come down here and just copy this hover code so it's all pretty uniform. And then I'm just going to come down here and paste it in. And then we'll take these numbers and I'll cut it and put them here in the RGBA and paste over those three numbers. And then that should do the trick there. And then, oh, wait a minute. That's the hover that I want for these guys, not the clock. Oh, well, let me just copy that real quick. What was I thinking? So now I'll come up to these hovers and I'm going to paste that green into here, then Control S and then Super Shift C to save. And let's see what our hover looks like now. So yeah, that's not bad. I could actually make that a little bit darker, but you kind of get the gist. And then of course that's turning green and I don't want that green. I actually want that the same shade of blue. So yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this blue here for the clock, the current blue. I'm going to copy those numbers, come back over to my color picker. And then in here, I'm going to paste those RGB numbers in here so I got the exact blue again. I guess I can't do that. Okay, well, that's all right, as long as I'm close. So anyways, before I was like somewhere in, kind of in here, roughly that color. So I want it lighter than that for the hover. So I'm just coming back, but not too light because that's the yellow font. So just something kind of subtle. And then I'm going to copy these numbers and come back over here. And so for our clock hover, I'm going to replace those so it's not green. Control S, Super Shift C. Now if I hover, yeah, a little too light still, but I think that's okay. Reasonably okay. I'll kind of go with these numbers. Try to have it a little bit darker. Refresh, come up here. Yeah, that's a little better. Okay, so that's darker. And so you kind of get the gist. You can go in here and tweak any of these. And so that's a little bit more. I think I like that better. That's more to my own taste anyway. I think another thing I would do is probably change the icon to my own custom icon. Not really anything you have to do, but if you wanted to change that, you actually could. So how would I do that? Well, I took an icon and I just pasted it into my Waybar folder here. So that's where that is. All I gotta do is reference this name. I'm using an SVG file, but you could use a PNG or I think even an icon file. But the SVG is just sharper, I think, in my opinion. I can go in here and hit rename here and just copy this name with Control C, and then come back into my config file over here. And then if I scroll up a bit, back where it shows this stuff here, I'm going to just comment that out because I don't really want to delete it in case I want to use it in the future. And then I'm going to come down here, tab over, and then change the format on here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to type in format in quotes and then colon and then space. And then I'm going to do quotes again, double quotes. And then I'm going to, in the quotes, hit a tab key. And what that tab key is going to do is give me some space here for the icon up here. And then a comma after that, so I don't get an error. And so now you're probably thinking, what? So we got the format and then the space key. Now what we want to do is we want to copy this custom/launcher because we want to refer to this in our style sheet. So I'm going to just hit Control C to copy that, come over to our style, and then under clock, and you can put this anywhere, but I'm just going to type in hashtag to make another ID. And then I'm going to just paste that, except instead of custom/launcher, I'm going to make it custom dash like that. So instead of a slash, we would use a dash, and then the configuration will know what to look for, and it'll refer it back to the config file, and it'll simply substitute the dash for the slash. I'm a poet and didn't know it. So after that, then I'm going to enclose it in braces again and come down here, hit the closing brace. And so now in here, what I want to do is I want to refer to a background image. So I'm going to type in background-image, colon, and then space. And now we're going to do URL in parentheses. I'm going to type in the name of our file and then paste it in. But first, I'm going to do single quotes here because I want to put the name in single quotes. And there we go. And then we're going to end it with a semicolon. By default, that should look for it right in the Waybar folder. So I'm going to Control S to save it, Super Shift C, and see what happens. And I got something wrong. So let's see. Oh, I spelled background wrong. Okay, left out the D. So Control S to save, Super Shift C. Yay! Except the image is not there, so I guess I got the path wrong. Oh, yeah, okay. I forgot. I gotta put in some positioning and sizing and all that. So first of all, let's make the font size reference here. Font size :20, end it with a semicolon. Now let's come down here and let me think here. Background, position, colon, and let's make that 20. Wait a minute. Let's make that center. Okay. And now we want background. Let's see. I think background size. Actually, I think that would be repeat. And we want to do a no repeat. And then background, let me think. I think it's background size, and then we would do contain. So it should actually take up the container of the background, I think. So let's give that a try. So Control S to save, Super Shift C, nothing. Oh, wait a minute. I'm missing pixel size here, so it should be 20px. Control S to save, Super Shift C. Nothing. Okay, let's go back to my config. Maybe I shouldn't be using a tab character here. So let's take that out and replace it with 4 spaces instead and see what that does. So save it, Super Shift C. Nothing. Well, I'm gonna take a break. Okay, and I'm back. I had to take a little break there, get a bite to eat, and have a cup of joe. Now I'm fresh. Sometimes when you get a little bit stumped on something, you just gotta walk away from it for a while. So, yeah, I'm back. And so I'm gonna take a look at this again, and I'm not really quite sure what's going on here. So I got my URL, and this looks normal to me. I mean, that really should be going into the root there. So when I click on it up there, it brings up my menu. So I know that it's actually working, the widget itself. But for some reason, there's no icon. So I don't know. So like my great uncle Albert Einstein used to say, Jack, when you're a bit stumped on a problem, sometimes you gotta look at it from a different angle than you were at when you created it. So with that in mind, maybe I do. But since the widget itself works, I think I can rule out any possibility that it's the config file because technically it works. So it's got to be something right here in the config or right here in the style sheet itself. And so the image, that's got to be right. But for some reason, it's not seeing this icon file. So up here, that works. I click it. I get it. And so this is working. I even clicked that off camera. And so I know the widget itself works and the space is working there that we designated for this widget. So it's got to be something here in the style sheet. And I don't really know what it is yet. This code looks good. I wonder if maybe there's another reference to this somewhere that's screwing it up, some conflicting code. I'm going to copy and paste that here into the search and see if there's anything else. And not there. Oh, okay, what's this? Background transparent. Oh, wow. I think I just found it. Wow. The different angle. So yes, this has got to be it. So it's putting a transparent background for the window network and custom launcher. So I'm going to take that out of there, and I think that's going to solve the problem. Well, let me delete that real quick. And then I'm going to save it, Control S, and then Super Shift C to reload everything, and hopefully it'll work. Here goes. It's there! Victory! Yes, so we got it. Nice. So now I got my logo up there. That is cool to see. So I guess that was it. It was just another reference that was referencing the custom launcher, and it was canceling out my background image call there to simplified SVG. It turned it transparent. Well, that's cool. All right, mystery solved. Glad to see that. Now we can move on to cooler stuff. So our Waybar is looking really nice now. I'm liking the Waybar. I like the way the clock looks. I got my logo going on. So I think we're good there. So now I think I'd like to take a closer look at Firedragon here. They call this the Vivaldi of Firefox, and it looks just like Vivaldi. This is Florp, or Firedragon, which is a fork of Florp. And I am liking this so far. It even has a side panel over here, which looks just like the Vivaldi side panel. And it's got all the good stuff there, which I like. Clicking up here, I can see all my different things, our favorites, history, and all that stuff that I like. So I'm liking that. And then down here, I don't remember this being on Vivaldi, so this is kind of a bonus. Here you can search your passwords here and look them up. I like that. And extensions, easy access to that. So I like the fact that I can get to extensions right there. I remember in Vivaldi, you couldn't do that. You had to go to the Google Chrome store, whatever they call it, and get your extensions through there. And I don't remember any kind of easy access right there. I had to bookmark it if I remember right. I don't know if it's still the same, but it probably is. So that is really handy. That's something I would like to see in Vivaldi, but I like Firefox better than Chrome-based browsers anyway, because I think it has better drag and drop support and all that. Although there is a Ozone like tag that you can put at the end of the call to a Chromium-based browser like Brave or whatever if you want to enable the drag and drop support in Wayland. But in Firefox, it just works natively. So that's one thing I really like about Firefox. So yeah, good on Firedragon. I'm kind of liking this browser. I might just run this for a while and see what it's like. So moving on from Firedragon, let me just go back here again. I want to kind of take a look at our wallpapers. I was saying earlier that Garuda Sway uses Azote, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. It could be Azote, who knows, but I think I just call it Azote. And this is like the Wayland equivalent to nitrogen, because nitrogen is kind of for X-based systems, Xorg. And so this really looks like it. And if I click here, I think I can get into a directory. And this is showing the Sway backgrounds. But I think if I back out of here, we added some extra Garuda wallpapers at the beginning of the video here. And so somewhere in here in the share folder, probably wallpapers. Let me scroll down here a bit and take a look. And there we are, wallpapers. So I think that might be what we want, Garuda wallpapers. Let's go in there. And there we go. So yes, that's what I'm looking for, I think. There's a lot of stuff in there. So I guess I'll just hit OK. And then they should populate in here. Or maybe not. Did I miss something? Maybe there was an OK button or something. Let me jump back in there again. I think. Yeah, I don't see anything else there. So I'm going to click on this again. And yeah, I'm still in the folder. And I don't see any extra buttons anywhere. So let me just OK again. And oh, here we go. Okay, I guess I just had to be patient and let them populate. I don't know, but there they are. And if I click on one of these, it should show up in the little display thingy in the lower center. That one's kind of cool. I like that anime kind of look there. So if I click that, and then I guess I got to click the check mark maybe, or click that. Maybe I didn't click that again, double click. That put it in there. So now it's showing up in our display. Now if I hit this check mark, it should activate it in our background. And it looks like something changed there. I can see something in the transparency on the bar, and it looks cool. Yeah, I like it. I'll go with that. Kind of goes with the dark theme also. So there we go. Nice. Got our background on, and I think I'm happy with the styling right now, so I'm good with that. I can probably jump out of there even. The welcome screen is actually pretty handy. And you got a lot of different things in here, maintenance and system settings and gaming apps. A lot of these access console commands, and instead of having to remember the console commands, you can just come up here and like click one of these buttons to clean the cache or clear out orphans, refresh mirrors and all that. Because how often do we really have to run these commands? A lot of these commands we might only run like every 6 months or when we have an issue. So the likelihood that you're going to remember those commands are probably pretty low if you're an average user. And so instead of having to remember them, you can just come in here, click a button, it'll automatically dispatch those commands to the console, which I like that. That's very nice. These kind of utilities are really handy. Then we have our system settings, so you can quickly check out your audio and other settings here at a glance and add things in if you want, like the pulse audio. Here again, you got Bluetooth, you got printing support, so you could simply just click this and add to the support. You could put your username in the CUPS group, add in scanning support, and enable the CUPS service there also. So you could really just kind of check all that, and your printing is pretty much covered, I think. Nice. And then back up here on top, you got your your gaming apps. I'm not a real gamer that much anymore. I used to be a long time ago, but yeah, just not so into it anymore. But here you got bottles which is a nice front end to wine. Then you got Lutris and Itch. You got your Steam native and runtimes here. And then here you got all your variations of wine, Boxtron and Luxtorpeda. I don't know what that is. That's a weird name. And then you got a Proton, GE Custom Proton Tricks, which is kind of a equivalent to Wine Tricks. And that, I guess, goes with this because they have the same icon. I'm not familiar with that, but it's apparently a custom version of wine that's optimized for gaming. And then, of course, you got your typical wine. Here we got our gaming tools, lots of various stuff, Steam-related things. And then under miscellaneous, more miscellaneous utilities for gaming, which is nice. VLC player is handy. OBS Studio if you want to stream your gaming experiences. Here we got controller support, Xbox and Xbox One dongle and all that. Very nice. And then here we got some recommended games in the repo, like Zero AD and all that. I think I just saw Minecraft in there too. That's kind of cool. Probably has the game and launcher. I like that. There it is. And so just a ton of cool stuff here. And diagnostic. So up here under the diagnostic tab, you get easy access, again, command controls if you want to do a system control, a journal control, the latest Pac-Man logs, you can just access it right there instead of having to go hunt for it and remember where it's located. So again, very nice, makes the terminal a lot friendlier, having to access it anyway. And your system logs, again, your journal control, if you have some kind of troubleshooting, reporting a bug or whatever, handy to get easy access to that. I just click the system control button here, and here you kind of get a readout of all the different services that are running on System D there, I guess. So that is pretty nice. I like it. And then under settings, we got all these different things. Show your buttons on the right-hand side. So right now they're on the left-hand side, like on a Mac. Even styled that way. But if I click that, it'll instantly move them over to the right. So that's a nice handy way to switch your buttons. I like that. And don't copy diagnostics to a clipboard. Enable light mode. So if you click that, it'll go into light mode and take you out of dark mode. Enable refresh, and then click this if you don't want to see the welcome screen when it starts up. So, and then of course auto start, that'll start the Ronnie welcome screen again when you start up. So yeah, if you want to disable it, just click that and you won't get it anymore. And then configure active language, which English is good for me. And then you got all kinds of links to the help files and forums and anything that would be helpful. So I like that. And then here we got terminal, and under here you can do some more terminal stuff here, install some apps or add a user to a group. And I'm seeing add user to a group twice, so I'm not really sure why it's in there twice, but that's all right. Can never have it too many times. So I'm just gonna authenticate here, and I just ran the install apps thing, and it didn't find the printing support stuff that I had checked earlier, so not really sure why I didn't find that. But I typically do that manually using Pac-Man anyway, or Yay. On Garuda would be Paru is installed by default, but if you like Yay better, you can always Paru Yay. So there we go. Back to our main screen here with the cool anime background, and I think I'm ready to wrap it up here. I actually went way into overtime here, a lot longer than I expected to. I really kind of expected to do just a quick overview of the whole thing and just call it good, but I kind of got involved in the scripting and a little bit of customizing, and I'm kind of glad I did it, even though I made a really long video. But I don't want to get too long here, even though it's already too long probably. But as far as Garuda, my 2 cents, I'm really liking this distro right now. And I love the Sway version. I think I'm really liking it. It's even working better with OBS, even though OBS Studio and Wayland is a nightmare for me. It's still probably a nightmare, but it's way better than it was. And right now I'm running OBS Studio with a simple argument after the call to OBS Studio. So the argument that I added to the end of the call in my config file, XCB acute PA something or other. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I put it up there or up there. So yes, that really kind of solved the problems. And I'm liking the way I styled this up here, the green and all our different. This Waybar is just really nice. It's just so much nicer than the Polybar. It's more modern and just looks nice. The SwayFx with the blur in the background, I really like as well. So it really looks like next level polished i3. And i3 again is something I'm really comfortable with. And I think Garuda just did a top-notch job on this Sway distro here for the Sway desktop. Best one I've seen, actually. Unfortunately, Arco Linux doesn't have a Sway in their Arch Linux tweak tool, so there's nothing pre-configured for it that I know of. But OBS is working okay. I mean, yes, I do have to sacrifice my hotkeys when the window's not focused, but I'm pretty sure one of these days it's going to be resolved between, and that has nothing to do with Sway. That's Wayland and OBS Studio, and someday that'll be resolved as well. So as far as Sway goes, I think it's fantastic. I'm liking it better than Hyperland because to me it appears to be a lot more stable. And like I said earlier, the SwayFx is really nice. I like the theming. The theming is cool. It kind of looks like a Dracula or Darkula, whatever they call it, theme there. And like I said, the SwayFx is really cool. So if I have two windows open, for example, Thunar and maybe mousepad here. So now I got two, and when I move away, the unfocused window is semi-transparent with a blur in the background. I really like that. And the other thing I like with both i3 and Sway, since they're essentially the same, minus the compositor, is that you can just kind of grab the end and just drag it without having to use a modifier key. I don't have to hold down the super key or alt or any other modifier. I can just drag it. So I like that a lot. So am I loving Sway here on Garuda? You bet I am. I think this is really fantastic. I recommend it 100%. If you want to try something new, maybe a tiling window manager, but you want Wayland experience to go with it, I think Sway is a fantastic choice. So I would give it 2 thumbs up for sure. And maybe 2 more just because I would even daily drive this. So yes, this is something, give it a try if you have a spare laptop or you want to just try it out. Even just the live ISO and boot to it, play with it and explore. I think you'll have a lot of fun with this, especially if you're a fan of tiling window managers like I am. So I love it. This is great. And I think I'm going to wrap it up now. And I hope this review and walkthrough was helpful. And if it was, don't forget to leave that thumbs up and hit subscribe. Both the thumbs up and the subscriptions are really helpful for the algorithm and to me. So that's a great way to support the channel without having to shell out any cash. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.